I'll call this meeting to order. It's the regularly scheduled meeting of the Transportation Public Works Committee. I'm Councilmember Reich. I'll be chairing the committee, and I'm joined by colleagues on the committee, including Councilmember Gordon, Bender, Palmisano, Glidden, and Yang. We are a full committee. We do have 8 items today, 7 of which are on the consent. Committee members can pull any item for further discussion if they wish. Item 1 is the 8th Street Reconstruction Street Lighting Project and Capital Budget Amendment. That's a resolution amending the 2015 capital budget for that project and increasing the appropriation by $186,698 to be funded from assessments of a University of Minnesota funding of $106,105 and approving a resolution declaring the city's intent to reimburse expenditures up to $80,593 with proceeds of tax-exempt bonds. That item we refer to Ways and Means. Item 7 is the 7th Street project. It's a capital budget amendment, amending that capital budget by increasing the appropriation for that project by $1 million and decreasing the Transportation Economic Development Grant funds of the project by $1,019,645. That'll be referred to Ways and Means. Item 3 is the Pedestrian Advisory Committee appointments. Those folks are listed in your packet. Item 4 is 40th or 50th in France Special Service District Advisory Board appointments. Those people are listed in your packet. Item 5 is the PV Plaza landscaping donation from the Minneapolis Downtown Council, and that's a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a donation of $15,000. That'll be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Item 16 is authorizing execution of an agreement with the University of Minnesota Board of Regents to conduct research to determine the design and operation parameters that will lead to improved performance of granular activated carbon filters for our drinking water. That will be referred to Ways and Means. And our final item on consent is accepting the low bid of Lunda Construction Company in the amount of $8,243,364.39 to furnish and deliver all labor, materials, and incidentals necessary for the construction of the 7th Street Trunk Highway 94 ramp and authorizing the proper city officers to execute a contract for the project. That item is referred to Ways and Means. Does any committee member wish to pull an item? Seeing none, I'll approve all as stated. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Dissenting nay. Those items carried. And we have one discussion item, but an important one. It's the Minneapolis Bicycle Master Plan Protected Bikeway Update. Director Kaki.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We have Matthew Drydall today, who is our bicycle and pedestrian coordinator, and he'll be making the presentation and answering any questions.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present our draft plan for the Protected Bikeway update to the 2011 Minneapolis Master Bicycle Plan. Today we are recommending adoption of the plan based on discussion after the presentation. To give a brief outline of what I'll cover today, a brief recap of the plan that we covered at our last TPW meeting in April. I want to focus a lot on the summary of public engagement. We had a really good time talking to people over the past month to 6 weeks, and we learned a lot of information. And then I'll cover 5 substantive changes to the plan that we made, and then we'll discuss some next steps. A quick recap of the plan. We're proposing up to 55 miles of protected bikeways, new protected bikeways in the city of Minneapolis by 2020. We separated them into 3 tiers based on priority and funding availability. And many of the projects, especially in Tier 1, are already funded and programmed in our CIP. And then one thing that we've talked fairly extensively about in the public engagement process was the need to develop engagement plans around corridors. There's a lot of, as we'll talk about in a minute, there's a lot of very general support for protected bikeways. I think when we get down to specific corridors, the issues become more important to the people along that corridor, and so we want to make sure that we engage folks around those projects. So just to recap of what a protected bikeway is, as you know, we have a wonderful network of off-street shared use paths that is really nationally, I think, recognized, especially with our parks system. What protected bike lanes do is bring some of the features of a protected off-street trail onto the street, typically within the curbs, based on what we're presenting here. but also other forms of physical protection, such as planters or a curb-protected bike lane. And I think this is a really important movement in the city as well as in the state and nation, because we know a lot of people don't feel comfortable sharing space with cars, and that protection, that physical protection, we believe can really inspire a lot of new types of riders to bike in our city. And it also helps connect our amazing trail system with destinations that people use on a daily basis. Again, our off-street trails are the most common type of protected bikeway. What we're focusing on now is actually the protected bike lane. Here are just a few examples. On the top are some great pictures of our trail system, and then the two on the bottom are protected bike lanes that we have now in Minneapolis. The Plymouth Avenue Bridge is part of a project that we're going to be looking at implementing this year as part of our program. And then 36th Street West was built last year, and so we've learned a lot about those two projects. Again, I mentioned earlier there's growing demand nationally for this, and growing demand in the city of Minneapolis as well. Protected bikeways were not specifically identified in the 2011 master plan, and I think that's one of the primary reasons we are bringing this draft plan back to you today. And the 2013 Climate Action Plan calls for the 30 miles of protected bikeways by 2020, and that's something that we've really latched onto in the city, both at the staff level in Public Works and also some of our campaign partners that are here in this room. Again, I just want to reemphasize, a standard bike lane is comfortable for a small portion of the population. I think of, I don't have a specific statistic, but I think of it as around maybe like 10% of riders are really comfortable just riding in the road without physical protection. And there's this whole other group of people, I think over half the population would identify as wanting to bicycle more if they felt more safe, if they felt more comfortable. And that group of people is who we really want to reach over the next 5 or 10 years. Because I think if we make the average person comfortable riding in Minneapolis, we'll see a dramatic increase in bicycling in Minneapolis. And I think that's one of the goals that we want to focus on is dramatically increasing ridership in Minneapolis. Just a brief reminder, we looked at 17 corridors as part of this feasibility analysis that outlines what the facility might look like, what some of the challenges are, and a lot of these projects in the feasibility analysis are also in our CIP for the next 5 years. And here's just an example of what that can look like. So for each of the 17 corridors, you can basically look at all of the different challenges, potential alignments, and some possible cross sections that it would look like. All right, so engagement over the month-long open public comment period, we received over 1,700 formal comments. I just want to thank Nick Ray, who's in our audience. He pored over that data and did a really good job pulling out themes, and that helped us understand what people think about protected bikeways. Again, dramatically supportive of the plan, and I don't think that's surprising because when you talk generally about protected bikeways, it just makes sense that a lot of people are supportive of them. I did have several conversations with business owners along potential routes, and I think we need to pay attention to those concerns as well along particular corridors. I had a really great conversation with the business owner in the North Loop for about a half hour, and we had a really good conversation about protected bike lanes. And I'm not sure at the end of the conversation that she was fully in support of protected bikeways, but I think we both learned in that conversation. And so I think that was the best part of the engagement process, is the one-on-one conversations that we were able to have as staff in Public Works, and then also some of our campaign partners that I'll get to in a second that helped us collect the comments. A few of the big themes, reasons that people support protected bikeways. Safety was by far the top in terms of simply what they commented on, but also health. People were really interested in public health. The environment was another one. Prioritizing bicycling was another reason to be in support. Connectivity was very important, and then equity. A couple concerns that rose to the top was, again, connectivity. People wanted to make sure that if we build these, that they connect to where they want to go into their destinations. Maintenance was another one, and then parking removal was brought up. So again, the next series of slides are just some pictures of what we did during the public comment period. Again, we had a great time talking to people. So this was our open house in April at the Central Library here in downtown. We had really great conversations with people there. Minneapolis Bike Week was a fantastic opportunity to engage people, and I think it kind of shows the power of those types of events and encouragement activities. So we just got out and talked to everyday people that are in downtown, got their sense of what they thought about bicycling and protected bikeways, among a variety of other things. The North Minneapolis Bicycle Advocacy Council did some of their own outreach, which we enjoyed hearing about that. I got these photos from Alexis Penny. Joshua Hudek gave me these photos. So the Sierra Club did a lot of outreach around protected bikeways, and photo on the bottom right, they came to our building and handed off their postcards, which was fun. This is just a picture of Oak Street Open House. That's a protected bikeway that we're planning on implementing this year very soon. It just shows another example of some of the outreach efforts we did during that period. Okay, so the 5 substantive changes to the plan, you can see here, we addressed protected bikeways that are not currently in the plan, which was a big one. We addressed selection and criteria of protected bikeways moving forward. Significant conversation around the routes that are yet to be determined, and I think there are a lot of good thoughts on that. Maintenance considerations, we made some tweaks to that, and look forward to further discussion. And then there's some discussion about Washington Avenue with the county. They provided a letter of support and asked us to maybe reconsider where we have that in our tier system. Okay, so I'll go through those one by one. The additional protected bikeways, this plan, again, is pretty much a short-term plan in terms of transportation. So it's a 5, maybe 10-year plan that really sets those priorities for the next 5 years. It's not a 30-year vision. So I imagine that we'll need to update this. I mean, pretty much as soon as this plan is adopted, we need to start thinking about 2021 and beyond. So it seems important to us to note that this plan does not preclude other protected bikeways from being implemented. This plan just identifies those 17 corridors that we analyzed. Additional protected bikeways will be considered as part of our normal design and public engagement process, and we even have an example of that through a Hennepin County grant where we have a short two-way connection plan. Project selection and criteria. We added some equity criteria and then other considerations. In the development of the plan, we focused heavily on the technical criteria, as we noted in our last presentation. We looked at some of our street lighting policy and other forms of criteria and added some equity criteria and other considerations. I think routes identified in the overall bicycle master plan is one that is really important, because all of these routes that we're talking about are not new. They're on our bicycle master plan. It's just pretty much we're recommending moving from a standard bike lane to a protected bike lane in a lot of cases. The street reconstruction projects that are already planned is another big driver of our 5-year protected bikeway plan, and then linkages to other projects such as Hennepin County and MnDOT. Routes that are to be determined. One of the big ones that we've had some conversations with recently is First Avenue and Hennepin. We need to figure those out, and I think the question is timing. Do we figure that out before the protected bikeway plan is adopted, or do we take a look at that as as our CIP process unfolds. And I think our staff recommendation was that we would leave these as to be determined in the plan and work towards figuring that out as part of our capital development process. And further evaluation is required. But the challenges for those corridors are outlined in the feasibility analysis. Maintenance. This was another big topic of discussion for us. We added language to clarify the numbers in there. Maintenance of protected bikeways, as well as other forms of bikeways and pedestrian ways, as well as the roadway, are very important. We want to make sure that people can bike and walk in the winter. We do have some direction from the BAC and the PAC to undertake a winter biking and walking study that would focus largely on winter maintenance, among other things, hopefully encouragement and things like that as well. So that's something that we're proposing to work on. So again, more evaluation is needed on the maintenance, but the language that we added was more or less clarify that we're new to maintaining protected bike lanes in Minneapolis. We don't have a ton of experience with that right now, and we just want to make sure that as we evaluate, study, and then maintain them, that we also consider the costs required for that. Then lastly, I believe, is change to Washington Avenue. Again, Hennepin County provided a letter of support and asked us to essentially move the project from Tier 1 to Tier 3. And so we did that in the plan. And before I forget, we also, as part of the engagement, we also met with the Downtown Improvement District Greening Committee, and they provided us with a letter of support with some specific recommendations that they wanted to see, such as no net loss in greening. They were interested in us figuring out some of the to be determined. We presented to the Transportation Management Organization and got their feedback on some of the downtown routes as well. The Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee. And then we also presented this plan to the Minneapolis Corporate Bike Forum. So there are a lot of people that work in some of the large corporations in downtown and bike regularly. So they were interested in that as well. So the next steps, we have 3 projects on our plate for 2015 protected bikeways: Oak Street, Plymouth Avenue and 8th Avenue, and 26th Street and 28th Street. And then we're also looking forward to developing engagement strategies around corridors. And so that's all I have as far as the presentation today.
Thank you, council members. Any questions or comments for the presenter? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you for the presentation and for all this work. What an enormous amount of work. And I know that it started before you even got here. So it reminds me that Anna Flintoff did so much great work and brought this forward. I have a small question, and I think I want to make a motion. If you could go back one slide about Washington Avenue.
Okay.
So this was Tier 1, and we moved it why did we move it to Tier 3?
Okay, we moved it to Tier 3 essentially at the request of Hennepin County, who noted that the protected bike lane is not in their 2016 scope.
Okay. So this is so most of Washington is Tier 1 that they're doing, and it's funded, and I can appreciate that. And I recognize that this little piece here, which makes it kind of an important connection through 7 corners there to bicycle infrastructure on 19th and connects to the campus, might not be funded right now, but I actually think moving it down to Tier 3 will make it less likely to get funding and less likely to be seen as important as it really is. And it's I think a key critical connection to the university, and it fits all that criteria about high bike demand, high traffic conflict, and good integration with our system. And I did notice in our criteria, existing funding wasn't like a big criteria that we mentioned. So I don't know when the appropriate time is for me to make a motion, but I would like to make a motion to move that project 19A, that little piece of Washington Avenue, from Tier 3 back to Tier 1.
I'll take that as a motion to amend the underlying motion. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor of amending as stated by Councilmember Gordon, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thanks.
Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is appropriate to ask, but I'm just wondering about the map. I didn't see anything on Penn Avenue or Queen Avenue. I mean, is that not within, I guess, the plan for the next, let's say, 5 or 10 years?
Yes, Penn Avenue and Queen Avenue, I don't believe protected bike lanes were under consideration for that. I know that layout for the Penn Avenue Community Works project and a Queen Avenue protected, or not protected, but a bike boulevard, I believe that'll be coming to council fairly soon. Yeah, as far as protected though, I don't think that was considered.
Councilmember Bender, followed by Councilmember Palmisano, and then I will have a comment that will be forwarded from Councilmember Glidden after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so excited that this day has come where we're about to vote on the protected bikeway plan. And I just wanted to say, as a personal note, I was there from the beginning when 10 of us were sitting around the table, and this was really kind of a dream that a lot of us had. And it's really an honor to be sitting in this chair to get to vote on this today. And I just wanted to thank all the people that made this possible. I mean, I personally spent hundreds of hours sitting in coffee shops, contacting our elected leaders before I was in office, attending bicycle advisory committee meetings, and the work I did was a fraction of the work that it took to get this done. So the advocates who were out at open streets, standing in the sunshine, collecting postcards, the staff, including Anna and so many people at Public Works, that Matthew has really been able to pick up the torch and carry forward. It's really a big deal to have this plan in front of us today. This is the next generation of bicycling in Minneapolis. And it's a big deal for people who bicycle today and for people who want to bicycle but feel afraid to or don't feel comfortable. And so this is something that's going to enable people to reach destinations by bicycle. We have this amazing trail system. You can bicycle for miles without going on the roadway in Minneapolis, and it's one of the things that makes our city so great. But now you'll be able to bicycle to the grocery store more easily, to work, to school, to so many of the destinations that are really important for people to get to day to day. And that has huge implications for our city. It means a significant ability to reduce vehicle miles traveled and emissions that come from transportation uses. So many of our trips are just a couple of miles. And right now they may not be very easy to make by bicycle, but this plan is going to make it much easier for people to take those short trips by bicycle. That will improve our air quality and the health issues that we know are facing our community because of air pollution. We just heard yesterday in the health committee about our ozone pollution levels, and we're potentially about to reach non-attainment for ozone, which has all kinds of implications. And transportation uses are one of the big contributors to that pollution. It's just one example of how this plan will help address public health issues. This plan will make it possible for people to get physical activity as they meet their daily needs. It's an important piece of how we are supporting community health across our city and building our infrastructure in a way that supports health. And I think even more than that, it gives people, even those who will never get on a bicycle, the feeling that their street is designed for people, not just for cars. That our streets are community places that are meant for people to use in all kinds of ways. And even after decades of designing them mostly for cars to pass through our communities, we still have an opportunity now to return them to community use, for them to be really important places in our neighborhoods. It will help support small businesses. We know from research and studies that have been done in cities that have implemented improvements for biking and walking that small businesses thrive. That even some of those fears about removing vehicle lanes or parking, that often the amount of business that happens after a bicycle or pedestrian improvement actually increases business for small businesses, especially those that are in our neighborhoods. And this is really critical for the work that our school district is doing in partnership with public health and transportation, our public works department, to support kids walking and biking to school. And, the stories that we hear from our principals and our teachers about how much of an impact it has on kids to be able to come to school after having some physical activity, it really transforms the school day in a lot of ways. It makes kids come to school ready to learn, ready to sit and do their work. And so, this is one small plan that has a network of bicycle lanes, but I think its impacts are really far-reaching in our community, and I'm so excited that we are ready to implement it now. We have funding already in this year's budget, thanks to Mayor Hodges and the support of the council, and especially the leadership of Chair Reich, who has been a huge champion of this work to start implementing this plan now. And it's already attracting other funds as well. We already are getting grants, millions of dollars in federal funding to help us implement this plan. So I just think it shows how important it is to have these lines on paper ready to go so that we can start this work, as soon as possible. So thanks everyone for all of their great work on this.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Palmisano.
Oh, I don't really want to go after that, but I do have one small question.
Sure.
On slide 20, Mr. Durdall, I really appreciate, the showing of all of the engagement that has taken place, and I really think that speaks to the strength of this next iteration of work, and I really like, because that is often something that is criticized by people that are critical of some of the changes that we're making, is that we're doing this in a vacuum, and clearly we are not. So on the routes that are to be determined, particularly the ones downtown, like on slide 20, can you tell me a little bit about how do you plan to engage some of the bigger businesses downtown, where these are changes to their streets, and do they care about them? But I know that, for example, 3rd Avenue South would probably require removal of the median, the planted median that they've been taking care of for years. So can you speak just a little bit about the engagement process as it looks downtown? Because that's different than working with small businesses.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a key part of how we determine our engagement plans. I think identifying those key players in each of the corridors will be important, and matching the public engagement appropriately. Regarding specifically downtown, I don't know that we have an engagement plan, particularly for 3rd and 9th and things like that right now. But I would say it's our top priority after we pass the plan, is to try to develop a standard for engagement around these projects. There is a lot of engagement taking place around protected bikeways. A lot of it is through the Minneapolis Bicycle Coalition right now. I know they're looking at some different designs, and we are too. But I guess to answer your question, we do need to develop that sooner than later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Glidden had to go for other business, but she wanted to make sure that I extended her thanks to you as well. Pretty heartfelt, actually. She saw the work the staff did in her community very directly. It was incredibly engaged, very thoughtful, very thorough, and then even the attention that she was able to get as a policymaker. Meeting with her, walking her through it, answering questions that she had or stakeholders had. That level of attention was, I guess, deeply appreciated by her, and she wanted me to extend that. And I'm sure others can share those stories as well. I think the comments about how much work that went into this cannot be underscored. And so I want to echo not only the value of what has been produced, and I think the ongoing importance of it. I want to just, because it can't be said enough, the work that went into this is incredible. It was a pretty quick turnaround for a lot of work that's going to have a big importance. And then just because, civic boosterism is not, I'm not immune to that. Just when Seattle and Portland probably thought they had their game plan to catch up to Minneapolis, we unload this. I'm just sorry. They must be groaning in misery as we uphold our annual #1 spot in America and now top 20 elite in the world. So that's really cool, and I enjoy a little moment of breaking. So thank you for that. I know we're going to talk a little bit. Councilmember Bender has some reinforcement, encouragement for the maintenance issue. I know, but I want to pass the underlying motion here now, and then we can discuss that part of it, which is work that I know you're undergoing and will continue to undergo moving forward. So on the underlying motion, which has been amended by Councilmember Gordon regarding Washington Avenue, and this is approving the protected bikeway update to the Minneapolis Bicycle Master Plan as described by staff. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay, that carries. And then I'll yield the floor to Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a staff direction that is in front of the committee related to the maintenance evaluation work that Mr. Deardahl described. And my belief is that this is a budget neutral direction for this year, though it may have future budget implications or may have budget implications that may need to come back. But I'm not suggesting that this direction now would have a monetary effect because we already have some funding in our budget related to maintenance. So the motion is to direct Public Works staff to conduct a bicycle and pedestrian facility winter maintenance evaluation to be piloted this next winter in 2015 and 16. The evaluation should include examples of all bicycle facility types, including off-street trails, protected bikeways, on-street bike lanes, and bicycle boulevards, and also include sidewalk snow clearance on pedestrian priority corridors. The results of this evaluation will help better define budget needs and practices for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And I think, as Mr. Deardahl mentioned, this work is really already underway, but this would just sort of reemphasize our policy support for this, and again, our acknowledgement of the need to understand future budget implications of maintenance of all these different kinds of facilities.
Based on your previous comments, it seems consistent with the methodology that you were contemplating.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bitter, thank you for that motion. We now have motions and I guess agreement from BAC, PAC, this committee, and then also internally to work on that. So I think that motion is well received by staff.
Yeah, there's something about learning, but then there's that hands-on learning, and so I think that incorporates that notion rather well. Any further discussion on that? I will make a comment, because this really does underscore the work moving forward. Once you've had this baseline, you got to kind of get into it, start implementing, and the maintenance issues follow very quickly after you implement something. And so I really want to then highlight our ongoing desire to continue working with our partners, with the advocacy people, the community groups. There are links to a lot of that feedback. We're an issue topic, and local geographical concerns can really come together productively. I just, Ethan has been doing a lot of this work with other advocates citywide, but new leadership has really emerged strong in parts of the city, particularly North Minneapolis. Alexis Penny is here. And to see that kind of activism where issues around community building are really becoming inspired by this conversation around biking. This is real on the ground work, and I think we can tap into that energy, get a lot of that local knowledge, and move forward even quicker. So I wanted to call that out as well. So on the motion by Bender, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries as well. And that concludes our business, and we will adjourn, and it will be a special adjournment. It's a placeholder for any necessary commentary or engagement for the community that we may need regarding the Southwest LRT. And so that would be an adjournment to July 7th at 9:30, which is a Tuesday. So stay tuned on that. It would be a brief meeting if needed because of the different moving parts of that conversation. And then, of course, our regularly scheduled meeting still holds true, which would be July 14th, that following Tuesday. So with that, we are adjourned.